here and now. Let us pray. Father, Mother God, we give thanks for this opportunity to be open to the awareness of your presence, to be open to the receiving of your love, to be open to the following of your guidance. We give thanks. And for those in our experience who seem to have a need for the awareness of your love in their lives, we hold them in consciousness and we see them embraced. We see them imbued with your love. We see that love dissolving their fear, enhancing their moment, fulfilling their lives. And we give thanks. And in those circumstances in the past when we have not been aware of your presence, we know that you were with us always. And we give thanks. And for the tomorrows, we give thanks that you will guide us, you will love us, you will lift us, you will help us in our transformation. And we give thanks. And so it is that together we say, Amen. Faithful or faithless? We begin the Advent season in Christianity across most traditions in Christianity, not the Orthodox Christian, but certainly in the non-Orthodox Christian. We have the Advent season representing the 4 weeks in the approach of Christmas. And in unity, we have taken the traditional words of Advent, faith, peace, love, and joy. And we have traditionally spoken of those on subsequent Sundays prior to Christmas. But as we speak of those individually, and today we're going to be speaking of faith, but as we speak of those individually, we need to also recognize that the process is not sequential, it is interrelated. These characteristics of faith and peace and love and joy are interwoven. And so we speak of those individually, but recognizing that as we speak of one, we also know that there is dynamics coming from the others. So it is with faith. We have our daily word with faith. I'll repeat it here. I will repeat it here. There it is. And I just want to highlight the first part of the second paragraph. I am always expressing faith in something, either spiritual truth or dualistic illusion. I'm grateful for the growing awareness that allows me to recognize where I am placing my faith and to make conscious, creative choices through each day. We are always expressing faith. Think about all of the times during the day that you are expressing faith. You want to go somewhere. Well, first of all, you get up in the morning. Get up in the morning, you want to brush your teeth, right? It's kind of hard to brush your teeth without water. I have not found that to be a very pleasant experience. So I go to the bathroom, and with faith, I turn on the water. Now, water comes out, lo and behold, except when it doesn't. And when it doesn't, what happens? Oh my God. What happened? Why isn't the water coming out? Well, most of us understand that the water comes as a result of the pressure that is built up within the city plumbing system. and that when we open the faucet, we're actually releasing the pressure and water is expressed. But if we have a frozen pipe, or if someone was monkeying with the main water valve in the residence, or we haven't paid our bill in a while, the water won't flow, right? And so we have this disruption of our experience based upon our realization that our faith was misplaced. There's a method of, or there's an experience of faith. There are two types of faith. There's the blind faith and there's the understanding faith. But we have a fairly clear understanding that when we open the faucet, the water will flow. Now, we get into our car. We want to go somewhere. We turn the ignition, and lo and behold, the car starts. We may or may not appreciate why that is. There is for most of us that are not auto mechanics, we use our car based upon blind faith. But if we are a mechanic, and we're familiar with the ins and outs of the vehicle, that's going to be a faith that is not a blind faith, because we know how it works. We know how the engine works. We know how the brakes work. We know the steering mechanism backward and forward. And we know that when we step on the accelerator, the gas will flow through the carburetor and into the combustion chamber, and the pistons will gain their motion through the explosions that are caused by the sparks, which are distributed by some other device in the engine. I don't know what it's about, but I'm just faking it here. So we have an understanding faith of how this all unfolds. But it would be interesting to look at all of the times during the day that we are expressing faith. You stick out your hand to greet someone, and your faith is that they're going to stick out their hand in return, right? And if they don't stick out their hand, perhaps they're going to go in for a hug. Well, that's okay. You can perhaps handle that. But then we have the person that doesn't stick out the hand, doesn't acknowledge your greeting, doesn't, in fact, looks through you instead of at you, or acknowledge your presence. And what does that do? It is faith that we have misplaced. And when we find that there is faith that we've misplaced, what is our reaction? What happens when we have faith that is misplaced? What's our internal reaction?
Hurt, disappointment.
Disappointment. And disappointment is a form of what? Fear. Fear is a spectrum of emotions ranging from perhaps the least innocuous, or the most innocuous, I say, of disappointment, all the way through frustration, and then we have anger, and then we have rage, and then we have blinding rage, and perhaps we have, depending upon your experience with fear, you may have different gradations of fear. Eskimos have 27 different names for the snow because they are so familiar with that substance and its application in their lives or effect in their lives that they have made very specific acknowledgement of the various stages of snow. Well, such as it is with fear. Perhaps you have experience with fear that gives you 27 different gradations of fear. Well, that's okay. It says something about your experience that you're ensconced in fear so much that you have to have all of these designations of fear. But nonetheless, our misplaced faith is a reaction to our misplaced faith is some sort of fear. And when we look at this process that we go through on a day-to-day basis, you've seen this slide before, but I'll show it to you again, this process of creation. And we are involved in creation every part of the day. I mean, everything that we do is some kind of a creative process. And so we have this realm of divine mind, And we are taking ideas and putting them into form. And that means that we are taking the material of substance, which Charles Fillmore defines as the ideas in divine mind. They are ideas, they're not atoms and molecules, they are ideas. And out of this realm of substance, we have this idea that becomes a thought, and that thought will lead to manifestation in some form. It may not be the manifestation that we anticipate, but it will be a process. We'll go through this process, and that process is going to begin with inspiration. This inspiration may be either a positive inspiration or it may be a negative inspiration. But there is something that wells up within us, within our mind, that is this thought, this inspiration. From that inspiration, we gain intention. We have some assumptions that are going to color those intentions, and then we have the attention that we give to that process. And all of that is affected by faith. It is faith that this will unfold in some way. We may either have a clarity of that faith, or we may just have a presumption of that faith. But the thing that shuts this process down is fear. And fear will cause this whole thing to dissemble and collapse. So the important thing to know is that faith and fear are in opposition to each other. And if we're going to practice our faith, we are needing to get a handle on our fear. We need to get some controls on our fear. Fear is one of those emotions that have deleterious effects on our health. Not across the board, but fear is a strong producer of hormones, cortisol, adrenal. Those adrenaline, those are hormones that have a useful effect in the short term. They activate our system. They get us going. They energize us to respond to the circumstances that we're facing. However, in a chronic condition of those hormones being continually pumped through us, they have effects on our heart health, they have effect on our immune system, they have effect on our gastrointestinal system, they have effects on virtually every aspect of our body. Those can have detrimental effects and will have detrimental effects if we are not careful about how we use fear. Fear is useful in circumstances of survival in particular. I mean, we stand on the shoulders of survivors, right? Our ancestors were survivors. At least they were survivors up until the age of procreation. And that process that we go through on a day-to-day basis is a process of placing our faith and either having our faith fulfilled or having our faith not fulfilled, and fear being the response to it. Now, I mentioned earlier that we have this interlocking relationship between faith and peace and love and joy. These are aspects of consciousness. Each and every one of them are aspects of consciousness, as faith is an aspect of consciousness. And when we are willing to admit that it is our choice as to what we let into our consciousness, then we have some control of our life and control of our evolution, control of our growth. So it is incumbent upon us to be aware that we are creative beings, that we have the opportunity to fulfill our inspirations, that we are able to attend to those inspirations with the normal processes of consciousness, and we also recognize that we can have those creative processes shut down if we allow fear to engage us. So I mentioned the two types of faith. There is the blind faith, an instinctive trust in a power higher than ourselves, because blind faith does not understand the principles of being. It is liable to discouragement and disappointment. For instance, if we go out and start the car and we have blind faith that when we turn the ignition, it will start, and it doesn't, what happens? If we don't understand the automobile, we don't understand the ignition system, or we don't understand this device that we're trying to activate, fear arises. Oh, I'm going to be late. Oh, this is going to require a repair. Oh, how much is that going to cost? Okay, so all types of faces of faith or of fear will come into our response if our faith is not fulfilled. And then there is the understanding faith that functions from principle. It is based on knowledge of truth. It understands the law of mind action. Therefore, it has great strength. To know that certain causes produce certain results gives a bedrock foundation for faith. And here is the faith that is powerful faith. It is faith that is nurtured. It is faith that is grown. It is faith that we have the control to expand and to embellish. This is faith that allows us to look at our experience and recognize what is happening in our experience. And if it's not happening according to what we want to happen, we in fact can take appropriate action. Like the automobile mechanic who is able to respond to a car that won't start in the morning, we can look at our experience and we can say, oh, that happened because this. Right? And then because this was the condition that allowed that to happen, if I don't want that to happen, I need to change this condition. Right? And so that understanding faith allows us to recognize that this condition was caused by this frame of mind. And that frame of mind is the genesis for this condition which caused that effect. And so what we can do then here is to recognize, oh, how do I change my state of mind? All right? So this process of faith is a process that allows us to recognize that we do in fact have control of our experience. There may be things that happen out there. You've heard me say this 150 times before. No, I'm sorry, 151 times before. But the things that happen out there may or may not be under our control, but certainly our response to the things that happen out there is very much under our control. In fact, it's only under our control. No one else can affect how we respond to those adverse conditions that arise in our experience. So it's important for us to realize that, hey, I'm not the victim here. I am the activator here. I am the one that has control of how I respond to that happens. Yesterday afternoon, after Ginger said, is there anything else we need to do? I said, no, I've just got a couple things I need to clean up. So I was putting away the boxes, the storage boxes for the decorations. Down in the closet downstairs. Now, how many of you have been in our storage closet in the men's room downstairs? You know about those opposing shelves on both sides of the hall, right? And you know that there is one shelf that has a bunch of screws and nails in it, right? Well, in order to get some of those storage boxes in, you have to, at least I have to, stack them up so that I can slide them down that aisle into that cubby hole, because that cubby hole is just large enough for these two big boxes to slide in, only if they're stacked first. And in order to stack them, it's much easier to stack them outside in the hallway and slide them down that aisle. Well, I slid them down that aisle, and there was some kind of support or something that was connected to the support on that shelf. And as I reached this resistance, I said, oh, that I can just push right on through that. And I pushed right on through that, and the shelf of nails and screws fell onto the floor. And I looked at it, and I said, Who caused that? Who can I blame here? Looked like me. All right. So I had the choice at that point to get angry. Oh, David, you screwed up again. Literally, you screwed down again. But I looked at it and I said, okay, I understand. I shouldn't have pushed through that resistance as I am wont to do most of the time. But I shouldn't have pushed through that resistance. I just need to clean it up. And lo and behold, it took me, I don't know, another 10 minutes or so. And if you hadn't left, it would only take me 5 minutes. So we have in our day-to-day activity, we have the opportunity to respond to the circumstances out there. And the response that we have is going to be based upon either an understanding faith or a blind faith. And if it's based on a blind faith, then we're subject to a response that is going to arise from fear. The understanding faith, though, is going to give us an opportunity to say, oh, yeah, I understand how that happened, so now I won't do that again, maybe. And so I need to proceed to clean this up so that anyone who comes in will not slip and fall on these screws and nails that are spread all over the floor. So if there are screws and nails that are on the floor still down there, my apologies, but it was because Ginger wasn't here to help me clean it up. All right, where was I? Oh, okay, faith. So we have these two types of faith, and those two types of faith, we can operate under. I just think I went off. I did go off. Could I have 2 A's, double A's, please? And in the meantime, that'll give me an opportunity to think about what this talk is going to be.
Who's talking with myself? Go ahead. I It's just a little bit of a break.
Let's try this again.
We totally weren't talking about children.
Plug in
I forgot
first.
what he's talking about. Can you start all over again? Can you start
Okay. Consult my notes here. All right. So it's useful then, as I said, it's useful for us to consider where we place our faith and recognize that all of the various places we place our faith will either be a blind faith or an understanding faith, and then we have the choice of saying, okay, do I want to gain a greater understanding of this aspect of my life? As we look at our spiritual journey, we have the opportunity to just place our faith in God. Nothing wrong with that. Place our faith in God and just carry on. Or we can understand the dynamics of God. We can understand the dynamics of God because God is consciousness itself. We are an expression of that consciousness. But that same dynamic that we have going on within us is let me restate that. The consciousness of God is a consciousness that we can assume. It is a consciousness that we can take on if we allow our responses to not be based on fear. Fear is the ego's tool to ensure that we do not consider ourselves one with each other or one with God. And that aspect of fear is a very, very powerful process. First of all, it emits these hormones, and our body responds to those hormones. So it's important for us to realize that we have the opportunity, in our spiritual journey, we have the opportunity to reach out and touch a friend. Not because they are across the big divide, not because they are in need, but because we are in need. We need to recognize that each of us is part and parcel of this web of life. We depend upon each other. While we extend our hand and touch a friend and allow that friend to receive our loving energy, we are also having the effect of giving that loving energy. It is the loving energy that flows through us that is transformative. It's not the love that comes to us from someone else. That's comforting. That's translational. Okay? Remember our conversation of translational versus transformational? The translational is that which rectifies an immediate situation, whereas the transformational is that which rectifies our frame of mind, our worldview, and our approach to life. So the love that we receive from a friend is a translational transaction. The love that we give a friend is a transformational transaction. Does that make sense? It's transformational because we are realizing that unconditional love of God. And in expressing that unconditional love of God, we are transformed. Receiving the love from a friend comforts us, it helps us, it lifts us, but it does not do the transformation per se. So this this process of an understanding faith versus a blind faith is something that we can apply. We can apply the principle of understanding how love is transformative if it is based on unconditional love of God. As we pass that unconditional love through to a friend, that is transformational. And it is important for us to recognize that we have the opportunity to change our minds about how we engage this life. Jesus offered us this. Maybe. Okay, give me a slide, please. Next slide up. Are we frozen?
Oh, yeah, you must be frozen. I got Matthew 17 up.
You have Matthew 17 up?
I have.
Right here?
On my screen.
Oh, well, could you show us your screen, please?
I think we froze. Let me try unfreeze.
You what?
We froze.
We froze? Okay. Let's figure out why that is. I'm going to pull up a scripture. Hang on.
This has been a crazy.
This doesn't usually happen.
Isn't it awesome?
It's all your fault.
Not gonna Saturday.
You just stay there.
Stuff. Well, it's all my fault.
When they came to the crowd, a man came to him, knelt before him, and said, "Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic and he suffers terribly. He often falls into the fire and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him." Jesus answered, "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you?" Now, he's not speaking to the man. He's speaking to his disciples, right? Now, that frustration is really a form of fear, isn't it? Well, he takes care of it. "How much longer must I be with you? Bring him here to me." And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the boy was cured instantly. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, why could we not cast it out? And he said to them, because of your little faith. For I truly tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. I have mentioned to you a resource that I sometimes use called the Five Gospels. It is a book that's put together by the Jesus Seminar, which was a group of some 200 scholars, theologians and scholars, not necessarily that they are different, but this Jesus Seminar went through the New Testament and identified those phrases that were highly likely, thank you, highly likely to be words of Jesus, and those that were probably something like what Jesus said. And then there were those passages that were considered to be something that's a reflection of Jesus' teachings, but not likely to be coming from his mouth. And then those that were not considered to be relevant to the teachings of Jesus, or at least not a reflection of the teachings of Jesus. So this particular passage is considered to be, thank you, this particular passage is considered to be something that is a reflection of Jesus' teachings, but not likely the direct quote of Jesus. Now, what can we draw from this, though? He says, why could we not cast it out? He said to them, because of your little faith. For I truly tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. So if we look at this passage and we consider it on the face of it, we say, well, that's pretty incredible. And incredible in the sense that it is unbelievable. And it's only believable because it's written here in Scripture, right? We look at how the disciples approached this, and we can imagine that the man brought his son to the disciples, and the disciples went through the machinations that they had seen Jesus go through, and their blind faith that this would be solved was not met with the outcome that they were expecting. And as a result, they were frustrated, and the man was frustrated, and the man said, well, I'm just going to go directly to the source, right? So he found Jesus and asked Jesus for the cure. But it is out of this, there's a realization that out of this, for I truly tell you, if you have understanding faith, the size of a mustard seed, not blind faith, but understanding faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. Why is it understanding faith? It is understanding faith because they recognize that this is a form of consciousness. This faith is a state of consciousness. And if we are properly imbued with the understanding of the dynamics of cure, then it is far more possible for us to be effective in this application of faith. I see that we are out of time. Let me finish with this. We have, on a day-to-day basis, the opportunity in everything we do to engage that thing, whatever it is, with either blind faith or understanding faith. And if we are willing to allow ourselves the experience of frustration when our blind faith is not met with the necessary or with the anticipated outcome, all well and good. But if we want to understand the dynamics, then that's going to take some study. It's going to take some meditation. It's going to take some prayer. It's going to take some use of denials and affirmations. It's going to take some effort on our part to transform our blind faith to understanding faith. And are we willing to put forth that effort.
Come on.
Yay or nay. It's up to you. It's your decision, and it's the effects are on you. It's not on anyone else. It's up to you. It's your choice. You can choose to grow, or you can choose to continue on the way you are. I appreciate your patience with our technology here. And we're going to transform the blind faith to an understanding faith as we understand why this system freezes up. Let's all have our meditation. And it will be a short meditation. There they are. We allow our attention to focus on our breath and to focus on our heart. We treat this quiet time as a sacred time. It is our intention to allow this time to be a time of quiet, of peace, of connection. Connection with the all that is all. And in that connection, also connection with each and every person in this community, the greater community, in this nation, and across the planet. We are all in this together. Our expectations of our own actions and our expectations of others' actions may or may not be fulfilled. But in response, we can offer faith, peace, love, and joy.
Amen.
Feeling these aspects of consciousness arise and express through us. We are preparing the soil for the growth of the awareness of the Christ presence in us. Faith, peace, love, joy. As we hold these words and these ideas in mind, notice how we are transformed. Notice how our consciousness shifts. Notice how each and every aspect of our experience takes on a glow, a glory. Notice how our interactions are more friendly. Notice how we feel. Generous, loving, defenseless. Recognizing that, why would we choose differently? Recognizing that we can carry this experience through us throughout the day. We come back into this time and space sharing the words of hallelujah.